The elderly man shuffled into the courtroom, wrists bound in handcuffs, his weathered face cast downward. "Name?" the clerk asked. In a shaky voice, he replied, "Elijah Brooks, Sergeant, United States Marine Corps." No one anticipated what unfolded next. Minutes later, as the female judge scanned his file, her face paled. That name belonged to the man who had saved her brother's life in the battlefields of Fallujah, making the ultimate sacrifice. Type respect if you believe honor endures, no matter how poor or old we become. Elijah Brooks, 69, sat on the courtroom bench, his shoulders sagging under a worn military jacket 2 sizes too big. The harsh fluorescent lights highlighted the deep creases etched by time and struggle across his once proud face. Decades ago, he'd stood tall in dress blues, medals shining. Now, he awaited judgment in clothes from a shelter's donation bin. The bailiff called his case. Docket 47B, City versus Elijah Brooks, disturbance of peace, trespassing, resisting arrest. Elijah shuffled forward, his steps slowed by arthritis and old wounds. Vietnam, then Iraq, scars both seen and unseen carried quietly through the years. "Mr. Brooks," began the prosecutor, a young man with a polished suit and confident grin, "has been repeatedly warned about loitering behind the Maple Street diner. The owner filed 3 complaints this month. Unmentioned was that Elijah had only sat quietly near the diner's dumpster, warming himself by the kitchen vent on freezing nights. He never begged or bothered anyone, just sought fleeting warmth when December dipped below zero." Officer Daniel Carter, who made the arrest, testified next. Found the defendant behind the diner at 11:45 p.m. He refused to leave when ordered. Elijah hadn't refused. He'd asked for 5 minutes to finish a half sandwich a cook had slipped him. But arguing felt futile then, as it did now. "Your Honor," the prosecutor pressed, "this is the defendant's 3rd citation this year. We recommend community service and a 30-day no trespass order for the downtown business district." That order would cut Elijah off from the 5th Street shelter, his only warm bed in months, and St. Mary's church meals on Mondays and Wednesdays. It meant true isolation in winter's harshest stretch. "Mr. Brooks," Judge Sophia Bennett addressed him, "do you have representation today?" Elijah shook his head. His public defender was tied up in another hearing. "Would you like to make a statement?" she asked, peering over her glasses. Elijah's voice rasped. "No excuses, Your Honor. Just trying to stay warm." "Any reason you chose that spot?" the judge probed, a flicker of something unreadable in her stern gaze. "The cook," Elijah hesitated. "Tommy, sometimes leaves food. Known him since he was a boy. His dad served with me in Desert Storm." "And your military service?" Judge Bennett asked, though such details rarely mattered in these cases. "United States Marine Corps, 1975 to 1995, Staff Sergeant, 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines, Iraq," he said, a spark of pride cutting through his haze. The judge jotted a note, then paused, her eyes lingering on his file. Something caught her attention. Before she could speak, the courtroom doors swung open. A sharp-dressed man strode in, setting a sleek briefcase on the public defender's table. "Your Honor, Vincent Moretti for the defendant," he announced. "I apologize for the interruption, but I've been retained to represent Mr. Brooks." Elijah looked up, baffled that hadn't called anyone, couldn't afford a lawyer, especially not one in a suit that screamed wealth. "This is irregular, Mr. Moretti," Judge Bennett noted. The court wasn't informed. "A recent development, Your Honor," Moretti replied smoothly. "I request a brief recess to confer with my client." The judge studied them, then nodded. 15-minute recess, she declared, retreating to her chambers. Elijah turned to Moretti. "I can't pay for a lawyer." "You don't need to," Moretti said quietly. "The firm of Collins, Moretti, and Bennett is handling your case pro bono." Elijah frowned at the familiar name. "Bennett, like the judge?" "Exactly like the judge," Moretti confirmed. In her chambers, Judge Sophia Bennett removed her glasses, hands trembling. 20 years on the bench had steeled her against emotion, but this was different. "It can't be him," she murmured, though the details aligned perfectly. From her desk drawer, she pulled a faded photo herself, young, beside her brother, Lieutenant Michael Bennett, in his Marine uniform, arm around her at his commissioning. Next to it, a worn letter from Michael, thin from years of rereading. He described a firefight in Fallujah. If not for Staff Sergeant Brooks, none of us would have made it. He ran through open fire to save a fallen Marine, then covered us to evacuate the wounded. 2 weeks later, Michael died in an IED blast. At his funeral, a Marine approached her parents. "Your son saved my life. I was the one he pulled to safety." He hadn't finished, didn't need to. His name was Elijah Brooks. Sophia had tried contacting him, wanting to know more about Michael's final days, but he'd redeployed. Later, she learned he'd been discharged with severe PTSD and a traumatic brain injury. Now, 2 decades later, he sat in her courtroom homeless, alone, unrecognized. A knock broke her reverie. Vincent Moretti entered, concerned. "Sophia, what's happening?" As her late husband's law partner and friend, he used her first name. "It's him, Vincent," she said, pointing to the photo. "The Marine who saved Michael, carried him out under fire." Moretti's eyes widened. "The homeless veteran in your courtroom, is that Elijah Brooks? The one you've been searching for?" She nodded. "Fallujah, 2004, same unit. Silver Star for the action Michael described. Does he know who you are?" "I don't think so. I took David's name after law school, and it's been 20 years. She paused. "What happened to him, Vincent? How does a decorated Marine end up here?" Moretti sighed. "From our brief talk, severe PTSD after his last tour. His wife left during deployment. VA benefits got lost in red tape. He did construction until injuries from service made it impossible. Then job loss, foreclosure, the streets." Sophia closed her eyes, recalling Michael's words. "Brooks is the best of us, would give everything for his Marines without hesitation. If I'm half the officer he is, I'll be proud." "What will you do?" Moretti asked. "You could recuse yourself." "No," she said firmly. "I'm not losing him again. There are ethical concerns." "I know," she replied. "But there's also ethics in how we treat those who gave everything for us." Back in the courtroom, Sophia's composure was flawless, though her hands betrayed a slight shake. "Mr. Moretti, how does your client proceed?" Moretti stood. "Your Honor, we request dismissal of all charges. My client sought shelter from dangerous cold, a basic need. We can also show he had implied permission from diner staff to be there." The prosecutor started to object, but Sophia raised a hand, silencing him. "I have questions for the defendant," she said, turning to Elijah. "Mr. Brooks, your record shows service in Fallujah, 2004, correct?" Elijah straightened, old habits surfacing. "Yes, Your Honor, 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines. And on April 17, 2004, were you in an operation near the city's western edge?" Confusion crossed his face. "Yes, ma'am, escorting a convoy. We took heavy fire. During that engagement," she continued, voice steady, "did you rescue a wounded Marine, Lieutenant Michael Bennett, under enemy fire?" The room stilled. Elijah's eyes narrowed, memories flooding back. "Lieutenant Bennett," he said slowly. "Yes. Good officer. Hit trying to reach a wounded corpsman. I pulled him behind a wall. He kept saying to leave him, save the others first." In the gallery, a gray-haired man in a Marine Corps League jacket leaned forward, riveted. "And what happened to Lieutenant Bennett?" Sophia asked, her judicial mask intact. "We got him to medevac," Elijah said, voice low. "Heard he reached Germany. Then, weeks later, his patrol hit an IED. His voice broke. All these years, I wondered if I did more harm than good, getting him out just for him to die." The gray-haired Marine stood, unable to stay silent. "That's him. That's Staff Sergeant Brooks. I was there, he saved 6 of us." Sophia struck her gavel. "Order," she said, though her tone wavered. The room hushed, tension thick. Elijah stared at the floor, uneasy with the spotlight. The prosecutor spoke. "Your Honor, while Mr. Brooks' service is commendable, it's irrelevant. The court disagrees," Sophia cut in. "It's entirely relevant." She set her gavel down. 10-minute recess. "Bailiff, ensure Mr. Brooks remains here." She met Elijah's eyes. "Mr. Brooks, when I return, we have matters beyond these charges to discuss." In her chambers, Sophia's composure cracked. She pressed a hand to her lips, stifling 2 decades of emotion. After steadying herself, she dialed a number. "Colonel Harrison, Sophia Bennett. I know it's been years. I need a favor now." 10 minutes later, Sophia returned, joined by 3 uniformed Marinesa colonel, a master sergeant, and a corporal carrying a polished wooden case. The courtroom buzzed. Elijah stood instinctively at the sight of the uniforms. Sophia took her seat and addressed the room, removing her glasses, speaking as a person, not a judge. I must disclose a personal connection. The Lieutenant Michael Bennett mentioned was my brother. Murmurs swept the room. Elijah's eyes widened, grappling with the revelation. 20 years ago, my brother wrote about a staff sergeant who saved his life in Fallujah, running through fire to reach him and covering others' escape. That man was Sergeant Elijah Brooks. The gray-haired Marine called out. It's true, Your Honor. Brooks took 2 hits saving the lieutenant. Sophia nodded. 2 weeks after, my brother died in action. At his funeral, Marines shared stories of his courage and the sergeant who gave us 2 more weeks with him. I tried to find you, Sergeant Brooks, but you'd redeployed. Later, they said you'd been discharged, location unknown. Elijah stood rigid, emotions warring. I never stopped looking, Sophia said. Now, by fate or providence, you're in my courtroom. She gestured to the colonel. Colonel Robert Harrison stepped forward. Staff Sergeant Brooks, the Marine Corps has been trying to locate you. The Veterans Reconsideration Initiative reviewed your file. New data from Iraq and Afghanistan warranted reassessing your decorations and benefits. The corporal opened the case, revealing a medal on a blue ribbon. By order of the Secretary of the Navy, for gallantry on April 17, 2004, the Navy Cross is awarded to Staff Sergeant Elijah J. Brooks. The courtroom gasped the Navy Cross, second only to the Medal of Honor. Declassified intelligence confirms your actions saved Lieutenant Bennett, 5 Marines, and disrupted an ambush that could have wiped out the convoy, Harrison said. Your Silver Star is upgraded. Elijah's stoic facade cracked. There's a mistake, he said hoarsely. I just did my job. No mistake, Harrison said. This is overdue. From the gallery, a voice shouted, Attention on deck. The gray-haired Marine and others with military bearings stood, saluting. One by one, everyone rose, even the prosecutor, visibly moved, stood in respect. Sophia, tears streaming, spoke. All charges against Staff Sergeant Elijah Brooks are dismissed with prejudice. She struck her gavel. Court adjourned. As formalities ended, the Master Sergeant approached Elijah with a tablet. Sir, we've been trying to process your corrected VA benefits. Your disability rating is now 100% service-connected, retroactive to discharge. What's that mean? Elijah asked, dazed. Back pay, full medical, housing, education benefits. Vincent Moretti added, Our firm will ensure it's handled, no delays. From the back, Tommy, the cook, approached, tears in his eyes. My dad said a Marine saved his unit. Said if I met an Elijah Brooks, I owed him everything. Never knew it was you. The prosecutor, humbled, offered. Sir, I had no idea. I'm sorry for how this was handled. Elijah stood, dignity returning, as if years of unacknowledged honor had lifted. Sophia stepped down, abandoning protocol, and faced him. My brother wrote what you told him when you saved him. No Marine gets left behind while I'm breathing. Today, Sergeant Brooks, we keep that promise to you. 2 weeks later, Elijah stood in a new apartment, still adjusting. The VA housing program had fast-tracked him into a 1-bedroom unit for formerly homeless veterans. On the wall hung his Navy Cross, beside recovered Purple Hearts and medals Moretti had retrieved from a lost storage unit. A knock came. Sophia Bennett stood there, out of robes, holding a small box. May I come in, Sergeant Brooks? Just Elijah, ma'am, he said, ushering her in. Then I'm Sophia, she smiled. Outside court. They sat, the weight of their shared history lingering. I brought something, Sophia said, opening the box to reveal letters. From Michael. He wrote weekly while deployed. This one's about you, written the day after you saved him. Elijah's hands shook as he read. Mom, Dad, don't worry about the news. I'm safe, thanks to Staff Sergeant Brooks. Yesterday, he ran through fire no one should have survived. Wouldn't leave me, even when I ordered him to. Said no Marine gets left behind on his watch. Elijah's voice wavered. He wrote about you often, Sophia said. Wanted to be a Marine like you. He was a fine officer, Elijah said. Cared about his men. That's rare. After Michael, I went to law school, Sophia said. The Veterans Court, housing programs I started, they came from what he wrote about you, how the system fails its heroes. Elijah looked away, uneasy with praise. I'm no hero. Just did what was needed. That's what heroes say, she replied softly. She hesitated. The day Michael died, he volunteered to lead a patrol to stop insurgents targeting civilians, inspired by your example. Elijah froze, survivor's guilt surfacing. For 20 years, he'd wondered if saving Michael was futile. He didn't die because of you, Sophia said, reading his thoughts. He lived as he did because of you. Silence fell, two souls bound by loss and honor. Snow dusted the city outside. All these years on the street, Elijah whispered. I thought no one remembered, that it was for nothing. It was everything, Sophia said. To Michael, those Marines, me. As she rose to leave, she touched his shoulder. Michael said a Marine's measure isn't what they do in the spotlight, but when no one's watching. You lived that, even when the world turned away. Elijah stood taller, dignity restored. Someone remembered my name, he said. After all this time. In that moment, something broken began to heal, not just for Elijah Brooks, but for all touched by his quiet honor. Some save others from death, only to live forgotten. Honor doesn't need glory, just recognition to stand tall again. If you believe no one should be left behind, comment respect to stand for kindness and justice.